giving frameworks, like, broad background and stuff. So anytime anybody wants to jump in for any reason, feel right at home to do so. I'm going to check in. Courtney said he's going to try to join us via iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen, everybody, and we can start. Okay. And then flag me down if at any point you can't see or can't hear or anything.
Right.
All right. There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. And we finally have video from Courtney. I'm going to stop share screen. We'll go back out so everybody can introduce themselves. So Courtney, does that work?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's a little bit slow, but we can hear you. So I'm going to introduce myself first, and then he'll go second when he's... Hello, good evening. We're just starting. So I am Dr. Holly Hobbs. I'm from Missouri. I have lived in New Orleans since 2008. I'm a musician. I play piano, and I've always really been interested in the intersections of music and social justice. And when I was growing up, my dad worked in East Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania, and we would go there for summers. And that was like the early 90s, mid 90s. And at that point, there were lots of street protests, and hip hop, rap was the music of the streets. It was the music of the protests there at that time. And so from an early age, I was fascinated by those dynamics. I've studied a lot of different kinds of musics. I lived in Ireland for a long time, studied Irish music. I got my PhD in musics of the American South. So I do lots of African stuff. But all those disparate things, the kind of through line through all of them have always been how music can be used to speak to cultural and community issues, and how it can make the world a better place, how people make sense of their own communities through music, right? And so when I first moved to New Orleans in 2008, then I really didn't have any intention of studying hip hop at all. At that point, I was still doing East African stuff. And then, of course, when I moved here, that was the year that Obama was elected. That was the year that Lil Wayne's The Carter 3 album came out, which was massive, worldwide success. And so there were all these different things that were lining up that really made me want to focus on rap in my PhD career. So when I started at Tulane University, at that point, they were still, I was talking with the administration there about doing part project and part dissertation. So, which ended up not being allowed later on, but originally I was going to write half a dissertation and then half a project, which was going to be the creation of the New Orleans Hip Hop Archive, right? And so I started work on that in 2012. And for 3 years, I did interviews with lots and lots of artists. And I created the NOLA Hip Hop Archive. And Tulane University Digital Library signed on to house it indefinitely online. And it's got a brick and mortar at the Amistad Research Center, which is the nation's oldest and largest independent archive of African American history. And so there it remains, and it's online as a tool for anybody to use anywhere in the world with internet connection. So in this class, we're going to be pulling from those videos, watching some of them from time to time, and letting the artists themselves speak about the issues that they want to speak about in their own words. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm co-teaching this course with Courtney Nero right here, and I can let him introduce himself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Courtney Nero. My artist name is Nesby Phips. Either one of those names will suffice if you want to refer to me. Either one, it's all good. I'm a New Orleans native. I was born and bred in New Orleans. I didn't leave until Katrina. Um, I grew up around music. There was music in my home. My parents were passive musicians. They worked regular jobs for the phone company and the post office, but we still had tons of instruments in my living room as they played them. As they were growing up, hip hop came along, pulled me away from instruments, brought me into electronics. I started figuring out a way to make this music that I would hear on the radio. Um, um, when I got to college in 1998, and then I hit the ground running in music. Uh, Along came Katrina, and shortly after, the digital age of society, really. And I leveraged a career in music using the internet. And I've been living off of the internet as a musician, as well as a visual artist, and many other facets, as I'm sort of a renaissance man. I've been doing so for the last umpteen years since I can remember. Um, I am related to a giant in the New Orleans music history scene. Mahalia Jackson is my great aunt, my great grandmother's sister. Of course, she died before I was born, but my great grandmother helped raise me. Um, so I grew up with the same values, traditions, habits, even pronounce some of my words the same way, have the same attitude. And there is some creative entitlement and license to me going about and doing what I do in the world. I take a lot of pride in being a New Orleanian, a musician specifically, that being our number one export. Um, Never thought it would take me where it's taken me. Definitely didn't think I would be, giving classes, sitting on panels. I've spoken at Tulane several times. I was a community consultant with Dr. Hobbs for the NOLA Hip Hop Archive. Uh, Moved over to the business department and mentored over there because I ran my whole career independently. And I figured out business in the process of trying to monetize off my craft, which is something that isn't very common for the average New Orleanian musician, the average New Orleans musician. Um, Most of them are performance based, and not many are well knowledge in how to leverage the intellectual property of it. So that's something I'm passionate about as far as bringing that information to the purveyors of the culture down here. I had the opportunity to live in Atlanta and New York for at least 8 years between the two. And I've gotten a chance to see what the value of a New Orleans musician is almost globally. And all of these things heighten my pride and definitely heighten my awareness of the responsibility that I have being from New Orleans. So, and here I am with the Cabildo. I remember going on field trips to the Cabildo, and I'm chilling with the Cabildo friends. So it's all good.
So hopefully this class is geared towards both, towards people who know literally nothing about rap and people who know a lot about it. So hopefully wherever the part of the spectrum that you are on, this class might have something for you. And, as I said before, for those people who are just joining us now, we're doing this really informally. So, if you have anything to say, if you have any questions or comments or whatever, don't feel free to chat, to raise your hand, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to start. We've got a little PowerPoint here. So I'm going to use that as the main screen. So here are our email addresses. So feel free to reach out to us at any point if you need anything at all, or if you just have questions, or if you want to talk about anything outside of class, feel free to do so.
Right.
We call this History of New Orleans Hip Hop from Call and Response to Rap and Bounce. So we're going to do things fairly linearly, but we're also going to kind of provide a basic introduction to New Orleans music and then get into some of the specifics. So here's our little synopsis that you probably read online. Courtney already said a lot about that. And of course, if you can't make a class, no problem. You can watch the Zoom link afterward, no big deal. So this is a picture of the brass band, the Soul Rebels. I believe it was taken in January 2020. So Courtney, do you want to give us an introduction into Soul Rebels?
Soul Rebels, the founder is, I'm trying to see him. He's the third guy standing in there. That's Lumar. He's the founder of the Soul Rebels. They started it out in the early 90s. Believe they're from the Treme area, 6th Ward. Some of the members are new, but they are a long time running band. And they were one of the first to incorporate lyricism into their music. You know, they kept the traditional music base, but they added on what was, you know, the current thing, and still remains the current thing, the hip hop effect of rhyming, and bringing that element to it. You know, bringing the updated street form of what we all know hip hop to be into their music. Very influential in the cultural identity for me. That was one of their hit singles. "Let Your Mind Be Free" was a very dope song growing up. I think it was a perfect balance between traditional jazz, the hip hop sound, but the content was very liberating, and then it reflected what I knew hip hop to be in the beginning, which was a very positive thing. Before being a conscious rapper was the thing that pretty much was the standard with hip hop. So they're a phenomenal group. They've gone to perform with some of the greatest: Rakim, Nas, Talib Kweli, Slick Rick. You know, you could name. I could go on and on and on about all the people that they've backed. Jizza from the Wu-Tang Clan, so on and so forth. I performed with them on a few stages. Actually working on some stuff with Lumar on a personal project. So these guys are a phenomenal band. They are instrumental. I mean, it's really two names in brass band music that really stand out. It's the Soul Records and Rebirth. I mean, you can't get no better. That's the Nike and Adidas of brass band music.
So Courtney alluded to it. Does anybody have any ideas as to why we started our presentation with a picture of this band?
I mean, is it just because they, like you said, Courtney, like they're the OGs when it comes to bringing hip hop into the brass band tradition? I don't know that anyone was doing that before them, right?
A little bit. So Rebirth, thank you, by the way. So Rebirth was kind of considered the first brass band to break with old tradition and start doing new things, right? So they're kind of the dividing line between old and new in terms of brass band. Soul Rebels and Rebirth did some stuff with rap too. Soul Rebels were kind of the first well-known brass band to really run with it and really infuse rap and bounce into everything that they did. So not only for that reason, but also we use this picture because New Orleans, perhaps more than any other place in the US, is a place where musical genres are extremely fluid. So, you know, you don't just have Zydeco in a silo over there. You don't just have brass band over there. You don't have jazz over there. Everything is kind of fused together. Everything influences and seamlessly moves back and forth with other forms of music making. So when we have a class called New Orleans Rap and Bounce, we can't just talk about New Orleans Rap and Bounce in isolation, right? You have to talk about everything. So we talk about general aesthetics, and then we can go into the specifics of rap and bounce, but we have to have an understanding before we begin that all of these different musics intersect and interact dynamically with each other.
Correct.
So this was a big deal. So just last month, the Tulane Jazz Studies program got renamed. They renamed it the Black American Music Studies program. So along those same lines, and you might know why I included this. Does anybody have any ideas why they renamed it? So basically, if we're talking about jazz in isolation, it is no longer considered a particularly helpful way to study music. Studying music in isolation is fine, but we get a much broader understanding of the way music works when we talk about it as fluid and dynamic and interactive. So just last month, they really made a very progressive effort to address these issues, and they renamed the whole program the Black American Music Studies program. And it's a really, really wonderful attempt to address these issues and really specifically talking about New Orleans in particular and how music is made here. So we are really, really big proponents of that. So just backing up, I'm sure many of you already know these things, but a few aesthetics of Black New Orleans musics. And I can't see Courtney anymore. Is he off?
I'm back. You can see
Right
me?
Yeah. So a strong backbeat, of course. And Courtney, jump in here whenever you want. A long history of street and public space performance. Do you want to say anything about that in particular?
Um, from a more than a historical standpoint, I'm gonna just give you the experience that I've always had and always known it to be. The
Right.
street is our stage of choice, right? And there's sort of no hierarchy to it, right? It's free for all. That's all. That's what I've always known New Orleans to be. I personally cherish it, and it has a very raw element to it, which is similar to how hip hop was started in the Bronx, which was a derivative of what was going on in Jamaica with the sound clashes, with the sound systems that would be outside, and you would have a big booming system on one side and a big booming system on the other side. They would go back and forward. They would celebrate the DJ, and the MC would hype them up. It was all a live thing, a go at each other thing, and the same thing happened down here. Um, for jazz, jazz started in the street. Brass band grew in the street. Uh, the bounce sound came from that literal same thing, a DJ in the street. Um, and there isn't the only difference between the beats of the brass band or jazz and what you hear now and what you would call rap and bounce sound from down here is the actual instrument that we use, but the rhythm is exactly the same. The beat is exactly the same. Instead of a live acoustic bass drum, you replace it with an 808 kick. And there's usually that boom, 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 boom. And then there's that, what would normally be a ride cymbal in jazz, is that ding, 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 ding. You move into bounce and rap from New Orleans, you replace that ding with a clap. So it's clap, 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 clap. It's literally the same thing with just updated sonics, if you will. And it all happens in the same space. They give off slightly different variations of energy as the dances may vary, but it's still call and response. It's still about taking it to the street, and it's still about dancing and movement. Really, just any type of movement. And there is no official dance. Everybody, it's your own expression. There is no can you dance or can't you dance. It's just get the fuck up and dance. Excuse my French. Just get up and dance. And it's a live thing. It's a performance thing. I personally, it's my church. Sundays for me happen in the street. My holy moments happen in the street. It's no different from people catching the Holy Ghost in the pews, people cut up in the street. It's a very spiritual, very African thing. And I get excited when I talk about it, but it's, that's what it all is. It's all woven together. It's all woven together. The only thing changes is technology.
Mm-hmm. So as he said, audience-centered call and response repetition, but overall, more than anything, linking movement to music, right? So that is the most fundamental part of all of this, especially when you're talking about New Orleans bounce. Rhythm-centered, complex rhythms, polyphony, multi-layered, and of course, there's a really famous quote, New Orleans is the northernmost tip of the Caribbean. It's not the southernmost part of the US. So when we think about New Orleans music making, it is very, very Caribbean in influence, very West African and very, very Caribbean, particularly Haitian, but there are lots of huge Cuban influences as well. And again, if anybody wants any more information about certain things that we talk about, feel free to, email us and we can send you reading lists or anything that you like. So moving forward, ubiquity and invisibility. So the few of us who were on the call at the very beginning, I mentioned the Carter Three in 2008. So many of you might know Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne is from New Orleans. He's probably the most famous rapper from New Orleans. In 2008, he came out with an album called the Carter Three. And that year, that album made more money than the entire jazz industry combined. But then in 2008, at the same time, you couldn't really find out, there was very little awareness and acceptance of New Orleans rap and bounce within dominant public institutions in New Orleans. So still at that point, their rap and bounce really wasn't being programmed very much in local festivals. Very few organizations were giving grant money to rap and bounce artists. So on the one side, you had this artist who had just made a record that made more money than anybody that year, and it was the most famous record that came out in 2008. And at the same time, in New Orleans, you couldn't find out very much or anything about your favorite rappers. You would Google search and, there really wasn't any information. There was nothing. So there was this break. It was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere in terms of being very, very hard to research and very, very hard to find. So that has shifted, right? So now fast forward to 2020, rap and hip hop are American pop music. It has become a very, very deep and fundamental shift. Things have shifted, and so too have things shifted in New Orleans. And another issue is age, of course, right? Things get more acceptable as we age, and things get more acceptable as musicians themselves age. So most of the pioneers of New Orleans rap and bounce are now in their 50s, right? So that changes things. They're no longer 17 or 27, they're in their 50s. So now we have a much greater understanding. Museums, for example, grant funding organizations, they have a much broader understanding of New Orleans rap and bounce as traditional music in need of assistance and support and recognition, just like any other traditional forms of music making.
Right.
Courtney, do you have anything else to say before we go on to this?
I could say that all the things that you mentioned, as far as the support for the actual the genre and the culture, being on a person that was a part of it, we didn't even look at it as something that needed support. We didn't look at it, again, it's performance based. We didn't look at it as these intellectual properties that need to move along into the space of sales and all of that. It was all performance based. We wasn't looking for support, so it's nobody thought about the longevity of it as it was being created. It was all like a moment in time that has proven itself to be everlasting. So I could say it's interesting to see it being non-existent, to coming into play, to now we're discussing it as it could build over Tulane and all these other spaces. So I could just say that's an interesting thing.
So when we talk about racial pathology and when we talk about representations of Black music, a really interesting place to start is how the Times-Picayune represented jazz music early on. So I pulled a few quotes. So in the 1880s, so the Times-Picayune was referring to Black musicians often. This was a quote that was used over and over and over again, besotted barbarians. That was a pretty common quote at that point. In the 1920s, that moved to portrayals of jazz. So Luther Williams, who's a Xavier University journalism professor, was quoted as, he did a lot of research into this, portrayed jazz as a noisy art and as a non-musical jungle music. And up until about 1965, jazz stars weren't even mentioned in Times-Picayune. If they were at all, it was these kind of really racialized, pathologized descriptions of them. So references to reefer, right? Marijuana was everywhere. References to jazz as a drug music. It was violent, it was sexual, it was criminal, loud noise instead of music. In 1918, the New Orleans Times-Picayune published an editorial describing jazz as a moral abomination, calling the music an atrocity. Its musical value is nil and its possibilities of harm are great. So our question to you is, does any of this coverage sound familiar? Right? So we hear, almost even the same words. Perhaps not besotted barbarians, right? But pretty much everything else, that's what they've said about rap. That's what they've said about hip hop and bounce over and over and over and over again. So the same tropes, often the same exact terminology that was used to describe jazz in its early years have been used again in the late 20th century and early 21st century to describe rap and bounce musics. We see throughout the history of Black music in America that these same tropes are used over and over again, regardless of the era or the changing social and cultural dynamics of place and time. Understanding that the history of such characterizations is long helps us understand that hip hop is not an aberration, but simply another facet of American Black music making. So, in thinking about this, can we think of any stereotypes of rap and bounce that are still used and considered acceptable? Like, what do people still say about hip hop? There are many things that are still said that still are, used along these same lines. Critics say these things over and over again. The terminology has changed, right? But we still say a lot of these things, make a lot of these references. So does anybody have any comments about that?
I would have to say that the messaging in music, the messaging in our music, they say is like the sole reason that violence is run amok, and drugs, so on and so forth. And I always call bullshit on it because we don't blame mass shootings on the Terminator Part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's just another art form in my opinion, but society always needs a scapegoat to blame on the ills of it. And we all know the cause of all that is. And music is just an art form. It's almost like blaming Picasso for some violent activity, or Van Gogh for anybody who self-mutilated themselves, or anything like that. It's just extremely superbly irresponsible journalism, to say the least.
And then, of course, when you're talking about New Orleans and rap, we can get really deep with that because in the 1990s, of course, our murder rate was extremely high. And that was also the rise of Cash Money and No Limit Records and all of these big, huge rap records coming out of New Orleans. So at that point, moving forward, those two things got inextricably linked, in terms of the way journalists and critics represented them. So still now you have references to New Orleans rap and bounce being dangerous, being involved in the murder rate, and so being aware of these things is the most important thing. So when you're reading, kind of descriptions of New Orleans hip hop, try to read it with a critical eye and try to see where the background of all of this still comes through.
Correct.
So the NOLA Hip Hop Archive, I started by introducing that. So we're going to be pulling from that from time to time, and we're going to be watching videos and stuff. So in a minute, we'll give you a little navigation to that site so you can see how it works. So moving from the broad into the very narrow, we're going to start with a basic introduction to bounce, like some of the big timelines, some of the big early dates. But before that, I want Courtney, if you wouldn't mind, to give us a descriptive introduction to bounce. How would you describe bounce to somebody who didn't know anything about it or how it sounded or anything?
It's almost a replica of how hip hop started. It came from break beats. Our particular break beats were very specific. It was drag rap, or the Trigger Man as we call it down here, by the Show Boys from out of New York. And the DJ would just run those back and forth at this club called Ghost Town in Highland Grove, neighborhood I was born in, my family's from. The most known record that sits at the inception of bounce is MCT Tucker and DJ Erb, Where They At. And it's literally the break of a record, an instrumental piece of a record. Again, just like how hip hop started, that was ran over and over again. And but instead of running complete whole verses, it was all about call and response. And it started with Where They At, Where They At, Where They At, which speaks a lot to the personality of New Orleans, because we all superstars in our mind, right? This is why we don't really flip out off celebrities when they come here, because nobody's shining harder than me, regardless of who I am, my occupation, my lifestyle, my credit score, or my vices. You know, everybody down here is somebody at the very least in their own head. It's all about being seen. We call them neighborhood superstars and all type of stuff. Um, you know, so you got stuff like the Where They Ats. Another, at one point it was all about putting somebody on the map. You would call out their name and say, put them on a map if you won't get on. So on and so forth. It was very involved. Again, there was no hierarchy. This wasn't like the battle to be the king of New York or nothing like that. It was just all about, man, who got the next fire record so we could party to it. And it was a trickle effect, because DJs were happening all over the city. But what happened at Ghost Town that one particular night when MCT Tuck and DJ Herb recorded Where They At, it just caught, it caught on, and now more people start to record their live performances. And he also took a moment in the most, for the lack of a better term, primitive way to kind of get out their political frustration, because all while it was all about recognition, because one of the chants in Where They At was Where They At. That was the self-affirmation that I'm the brother, or as they said on the dirty version, I'm the nigga. It's about our self-confidence, just shouting yourself out. I'm the man, I'm the one. Then it was all about, the involvement and interaction with the ladies. So it shake that thing like a salt shaker. And then, and then took a hard left and said, fuck David Duke, fuck David Duke. So we represented or covered pretty much anything we wanted / needed to in the music, all while having a good time, And again, that replicated, and through each replication, there was an evolution. There were more slangs, a chance that came into it. At one point, there was a reggae influence, which is really an echo, in my opinion, because a lot of your early ska records was really just Jamaican versions of the 45 jazz records that they would receive as imports in Jamaica, right? So, then it comes back to us, and now the lyricism in it, like Juvenile, we would start tripling up our lyrics. Our people in the business is taking that niggas because they're coming from uptown, or it was all about Follow Me Now, Follow Me is an ad lib from Jamaican, music, from reggae music, from the street music, So it's interesting how it evolved, and especially in the first 3 years, how many records just popped up. And then from there, how many labels popped up.
And then I'll interject there when you're talking about Follow Me Now. So like from the that's a really good example of a musical through line, because like from the Jamaican influence to Mardi Gras Indian musics, to Follow Me Now, Because I'm a Hot Girl, which ended up being, a massive bounce hit, then was repeated over and over and over, from Partners in Crime all the way through to Lil Wayne. Right. So you have a really good example of it moving through tons of different, quote unquote genres, stemming directly from Mardi Gras Indian music and then ending up on Bounce Records. Right. Sorry, Renee, I interrupted.
And it's all African diaspora, right? Like it all goes back to the beginning of it all, right? And we just echoing, bouncing those styles around, and like, oh, y'all doing that? All right, we're gonna do some of that too, And it was really all about what sound good. And the crazy part about it wasn't intentional. Nobody woke up and said, hey man, we're gonna start this new thing. It was literally people just getting out, taking to the street and do what they do on usually a Sunday night. So again, as a practitioner, somebody that grew up in it, it's a beautiful thing to see what it's evolved into. Especially seeing Drake taking it to where he took it. He got to be like the most popular artist in the world, and that sound still was value. And it's still making people shake their heads across the world. It's beautiful.
So Courtney mentioned, as I said, I put some important dates on here. You can read through those yourselves, but I want to particularly mention 1986 Drag Rap. So Courtney mentioned that, and it's one of those really strange anomalies in American music that this particular record caught on so fast with New Orleans DJs, and then became a staple of bounce songs. So we're going to listen to a little bit if you've never heard it before, just so you can get a sense of it. And then you will, if you've ever heard bounce before, you will certainly recognize it.
Wait, are you gonna play the whole record?
No,
With
let's just play,
MailChimp's recommendation smarts.
Let's just play a little bit about it. What were you going to say?
Because Memphis also, the Memphis sound also pulled from this record, this Trigger Man. The difference between us and them is we sped it up, they slowed it down. So they got that, you know, that turn up, tear the club up, you know, bluesy type of feel to it, and ours was more upbeat and jazzy. So there were two different Southern sounds that came out of just this one record. Same breakbeat too, for the record.
You'll get insights on what people are more likely to buy next.
All right, so that's Jackrabbit. So it is a curiosity of history that that particular record caught on so strongly here, and then it came to influence and provide a framework for countless bounce songs moving forward. So another thing that we wanted to mention is project rap. So in 1987, some of you might know Bobby Marchand or might know his name. So he was a big time rhythm and blues manager and artist. In 1987, he formed Manicure Records, and he released a version of project rap, which would become another major staple of New Orleans bounce. So project rap is basically a listing of wards, neighborhoods. If you've heard any New Orleans music at all, including brass band, you would recognize it. You know, everybody from the St. Thomas, you know, everybody. So they go through every different neighborhood, you know, especially the one where the musician performer is from. So then moving on into project rap. Uh-oh. There we go. Then you have Gregory D and Manny Fresh. So we're going to get to that in a second. But before that, we're going to back up and talk a little bit more about Ghost Town, which is what Courtney was talking about. So T.T. Tucker in Ghost Town, Holly Grove, you know, it was a bar in Holly Grove, which is right across, Courtney, wasn't it right across the street from where Fiend grew up? You're muted. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
All right. Yeah, Fiend, Richard Jones, he grew up in the middle of that block. That was Edinburgh is the name of the street, and yeah, he grew up right in the middle of it. He witnessed it. Ironically, his grandmother had band service that I rode on the way to kindergarten. Their house was very infamous because they had a soda machine out front in the middle of the block that you could go get a cold drink from 24 hours. So yeah, he was in the middle of that block. But Ghost Town was happening. The building is still there. It's no longer a bar. It'd be beautiful if it still was. Neighborhood bars are the you know, they are the identity of the city. But that's where it all went down, inside and outside. Ghost Town was popping. I was too young to go inside, but I sure went outside.
So, and I believe T.T. Tucker was from the St. Thomas, but he was at this bar, Ghost Town, one particular night. It's a very infamous story, which we're about to play you. But I wanted to include this little ethnographic snippet from 10th Ward Buck. So he wrote a book called Definition of Bounce. I think it was in 2010. So he said, I was born to bounce music. As soon as I was able to hear it bounce, it was bounce music. I was in St. Thomas. Growing up, we had T.T. Tucker and all those people. It was a long time ago, a long, long time ago. But I remember this one time I was about 8 years old and I was looking out my back window. At that time, I wasn't going outside like that. It was a big block party. And oh man, it was big, right out in the back. All I could see was T.T. Tucker holding the mic, boot up, boot up, boot up. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's rolling over there. So my first big party that I ever saw was that block party out my back window. And as I grew and got older, I started going outside because I was young. My buddies and them would go outside, but I wasn't that type to be outside like that. But I was young the first time I heard bounce. That's what I was raised on, was bounce. My mom listened to a lot of oldies but goodies, and that's why I listened to that also. But what I listened to was bounce. It goes back a long, long time ago. I don't even remember the first time I heard it. So now we're going to listen to T.T. Tucker himself talk about that particular night. Let's see if I can get there. And chat us if you can't hear very well, but I think it should work.
I grew up in the St. Thomas Project. I grew up in the St. Thomas Project, raised and born, uptown area.
What was it like?
St. Thomas, just like in the household, just in the hood, just all about survival. It's just all about surviving, that's all. Some people made it out, on a good level. Some people don't,
What were block parties like?
Oh man, Black Party was crazy.
Who was DJing?
Well, I'm taking you all the way back. We talking about DJ Rohan.
What years were this? Would this be when you first turned on?
Talking about 1988, 87, 89, 90. DJ Rohan. Then they had DJ Michelle, this dude used to be writing a biking shells. That's the only way you know him. He had biking shell song. Sir Charles. He thought he was the latest man, Yeah, so, and then they got Slick Bruce. You know what I'm saying? Go all the way back. You know what I'm saying? From all the way back from 88, 89.
What kind of records did you hear in the house? Or on the radio or whatever? What was it?
Well, since, we always still in the mood, me, you know what I'm saying? A few cats from my project, we always stayed on the move, but I used to love R&B music. And, I used to listen to like Few Times Dope, Steady Beat, you know what I'm saying? Slick Rick.
Did you know any of like Don B was in the rhythm and blues little group? Did you remember any of that? They used to play the gong shows and stuff.
No, I never I must have been before my time, Yeah. We used to have a lot of gong shows across the river at Club Floats. I remember I went there one day, and they had this guy called Bobby Marchand. He was a good, person, And I come in there one day, right? So I had started in the St. Thomas, right? With the way they had. Well, it just was in the streets. So when I come to the gong show on the West Bank ain't no T-Tuck. You know what I'm saying? They never heard of me, but it was always in St. Thomas. All right, so when I come to the gong show, I want to sign up. I said, yeah, where I sign up at? He said, sign up right here. So I put my name there. He said, T.T. Tucker. You ain't no T.T. Tucker. I said, what? oh, you ain't no TJ Tucker? I said, well, where you at then, dog? I'm looking for him. No. But you know, well, anyway, what you want to sing? I said, I want to sing, but what you want rap? I said, I want rap, but whatever you want to do, just put it down. I didn't know what I want to put down because I didn't know what I was going to call what I was doing.
Well, let's back up. So I heard Bobby Tarzan had a really big desk. Do you remember that? Like he used to sit behind this huge desk.
Yeah, I'm talking about bigger than his tail. You know, and you know, that's one thing about him. He was a good promoter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know, shout out to him, you know, rest in peace, you know. You know, that's just like in my time, you know, being that he used to do his thing and promote a lot of concerts. You know, well, anyway, you know, I done the Chicken Man beat. And the DJ, it wasn't my DJ. It was another DJ from Club Flows. You know, he just played the song. I'm like, Big Keith, yeah. And he just played the song like at the beginning. I'm like, no, man. Then I was like waiting till the breakdown come and feeling like, then Bob Moss said this, boom, 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 boom. I said, man, you told me. He said, yeah, get out the way. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. I said, all right. A lot of people like, Tucker, don't worry about it. They don't know you on the West Bank. That was on Club Flows. That was in 1990. He said, a lot of people don't know you. Not over here. You know what I'm saying? You stay uptown, you know, and that's where the music coming from. So, you know, you don't get about it. So, I got gone. Then after that, you know, I got mad, you know, within myself, and I just, doing it at the block parties, you know, with the tearing it down, you know, and I get to meet DJ Earl, because we ain't spoke about DJ Earl. I can't forget about DJ Earl. It's MCT Tucker, DJ Earl. So, you know, this girl they called Connie Ray from my St. John Project, you know, way back then. You heard me? So she said, Tucker, you know, she said, my husband named Earl, you know, he's DJ. I said, we DJ. We DJ at Ghost Town. I said, Ghost Town? What is that? What, they ain't got no lights on in there or something? I said, no, boy. She said, Ghost Town in 17 was Hollywood. I said, Hollywood? Well, I'm going to go there. You know, so, you know, I had in mind doing that, you know. She said, I want you to meet my husband. You know, y'all probably do something together. So, I went around on the other side of the project on St. Andrew because we used to hang out on Rousseau until the stream, right down the corners, you know, where the store at. So, and I was telling guys in the project, man, I'm going to go to Ghost Town tonight. And had to do light gray, Kid Black, you know, and a lot of more cats, you know, were like, man, you better not go no Ghost Town, man. They're going to kill you. I said, what you mean they gonna kill me? Man, they don't like nobody from out of St. Tone. I said, man, you tripping, man. I'm going to Ghost Town, man. You know? So when Saturday come, I went to Ghost Town. And you know, they had a lot of guys over here. They had red bandanas on, black bandana, blue bandana. You know what I'm saying? They popping bottles, you know, them like looking around like, and they looking at me crazy like, well, we know you ain't from around here. Who is you? So I jumped on the stage. The stage was no bigger than this table. I jumped on the stage. I said, shit, bro, what your name is? He said, my name is Earl. I said, you kind of red husband? He said, yeah. So I said, well, my name T. Tucker, bro. He said, yeah. He said, what's up? So I seen the microphone, you know, it was so energetic. behind that mic. I see that mic like, and I grab the mic. I said, hello, hello, hello. What's up, what's up, what's up? You know, and
What was the crowd like? What was the crowd like? Was
the
it
crowd,
that first show?
the crowd was like really ignoring me because they were like, who is this dude? Just come jump on this stage and grab a microphone. You know what I'm saying? You know, they used to be really sex tripping back then. That's why the guys from St. Thomas told me, Tucker, don't go to Ghost Town. But I still went down.
Was it
So
part of the reason just because of the awards? Because like you weren't from that area? Like what was the deal?
right, I went from the area. You know, so what happened was, so you know, I got on the mic and so I said, man, where we at? I told DJ Herb, I said, you know, where we at? You know, where we at? He said, man, we in Ghost Town. I said, no, what hood we in? He said, it's Hollywood. So I said, look, you know how to cut the trigger, man, like, bam, 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 bam. You know how to do that? And he's like, yeah, I know how to do that. I said, well, do it then. Then I see in the back that scratch, you know, scratch, bam, 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 bam. I said, yeah. So then I really did have it all up the pump. And I just was saying, go, Ghost Town, go, Ghost Town, go. You know, people that was really ignoring me because, you know, they were sex tripping. You know, man, we ain't give you no airplay like that. You see what I'm saying? So I got the next Saturday. Every Saturday, Ghost Town, you know, they do something. And the next Saturday, DJ Earth said, man, say how you go, say Pigeon Town, you know what I mean? All that. I said, go how to go, how to go. Then how to go on that side. I said, go, Ghost Town, go, Ghost Town, go. You know, then everybody goes high. You know what I'm saying? And I said, Good Town is in the house. You know, then, you know, this is what they getting flooded like that. Then I go to San Antonio and I do the Black Poet. And one said, I come there, and I was like, man, all these people come here for? Come here for you. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you know, because I was just representing all the hoods. And when I got up there, they had this guy on the side of me, you know, because the stage was no bigger than the table, like I said. So they had to do T-Slim. He like, Tuck. He hit me on my leg. I just be on the stage. You know, he hit me on my leg. Tuck. Say, where they at? Say, where they at? 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 With that prison down posse, with that prison down posse, where they at? You know what I'm saying? You know?
Is that something you just thought of on the spot? Like, is that?
It just came from, I think it come from a gift from God. Because, you know, music that, you know, always did love music. You know?
Were there any musicians in your family?
All right, so let's stop there. And we're going to listen to the song now. So while I find it, Courtney, do you have anything to say about the T.T. Tucker's interview? Courtney?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
All right. It speaks, his story speaks directly to the improvisational aspect of it, that component of it. None of it was planned, you know. He just wanted to contribute to the good time. He had a desire to be the MC. He felt he had something to say, and and it went down. He forced his issue, and it wound up, birthing a whole new genre, by accident. Like you were saying, like the conversation ended with him. Did you plan that? Did it mean something? He said it came from God, which really speaks to everything Black people have created since we left the continent. You know what I'm saying? It all came from a soul type place. Land on our feet when we do it.
Coming at you for 1992. Street side, you stupid fuck. So shake up, shake that, so shake up. So shake up, shake that ass like a shake, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it.
Holly, we're not hearing any sound. It's kind of cutting in and out.
Oh, you aren't? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we will pull that, but you guys can look it up on your own, and then you can hear it in totality. All right, so moving on then. So let's go to Buck Jump Time. So we're moving from kind of one of the first big records on to one of the maybe second or third big record of Bounce. So Courtney, do you want to introduce Buck Jump Time?
Buck Jump Time was produced by Manny Fresh, the world famous Manny Fresh. If you ask me, he's sort of like the godfather of Bounce. The MC was Gregory D on that track. I remember being in elementary with that song. It was all about recognition, recognizing the different neighborhoods and the different wards, which, if you don't know, are voting districts down here. But from a neighborhood standpoint, we identify ourselves with our wards. It was a hype song. It was a very unique backbeat. It reminded me of one of these preset beats that used to come in drum machines and stuff like that. If you pull all the vocals off of it, it's a very simplified beat. But with those lyrics on top of it and everything that he covered, real street incidences with at the St. Mary's dance, people used to hop out of trees and snatch a chain, the whole nine. It was commentary. It was almost like, our own version of NWA, straight out of Compton. So it really was the soundtrack to the early 90s in New Orleans. And if you didn't know what was going on the other side of town, that song definitely lets you know. It was an exciting song, very upbeat song. It's no doubt a classic in New Orleans hip hop.
So we're going to try to play it, but Jason, let me know if the music cuts in and out, or if we have any trouble hearing anything, and then you guys can just listen to it on your own. But we're going to try. From 1989.
Where are you sleepyheads out there?
Oh, yeah. You know the bass line in the background, baby. New Orleans, you know what time it is? Fuck your time. Back Cali, yo. Fuck your time. Back now for me. Fuck your time. Magnolia. Fuck your time. St. Thomas. Fuck your time. Beat. Fuck your time. Back Iberville. Fuck your time. Zion. Fuck your time. Bishop. Fuck your time. Listen to the rhymes back to back that I wrote for the project rap. This rap is wild, a number one hit. When you ever heard a rapper bust like this? Uptown, Third World, that Cali, yo, melt for me. Magnolia, the home of dope, St. Thomas, Lafitte, the Iberville's horn, and that 7 Ward, St. Bernard. The Fisher, from that 1.5, where the brothers at? From that wild desire, where the Florida's at? Y'all ready to roll with that wild buck jumping on Holly Grove? Gerttown, Pigeon Town, Seabrook, this whole city throws down. That Uzi Ward, Gap, Grove, and Geese symbolizes New Orleans East. Them brothers, while they don't give you a change, jump everybody have the same everything. Brothers gonna pop it, you're running like stallion. I love Poppy, got your medallion. Remember St. Mary's dance? Please, brothers used to be hopping out of trees. Wild hard New Orleans, Lord. I heard they kicking colors in the St. Bernard. The point behind this whole rap. This city is cold as any other on the map. New York this, California that. Forget that talk, this is where it's at. They're talking about California like it's so dope. Let me see Cali walk through the Cali-O. The project wards all on time. New Orleans number one in this rhyme. New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans. New Orleans number one, and you know that's true. And if you disagree, forget you. All right, since we got y'all fucking, y'all know the usual. You better look for the nearest show. Cause this bad boy about to get wild. We're gonna find out what ward is kicking it, y'all. That third one kicking it, hell yeah. That fifth one kicking it, hell yeah. That seventh one kicking We roll. That's how all got men get busy. Let me see you.
All right. So, and then some of you might have noticed the brass band influence there, the tuba bass line. So, you see these recurring aesthetics over and over and over again. So now we're going to listen to Gregory D talk about bunk jump time. So one of the interesting things about this particular archive is that if you scroll through and you go to the videos, then under it, they have a keyword searchable and time code database. So we can scroll through and see exactly when he talks about what. So let's see. It looks like 9:54. He starts talking about ward roll calls and bunk jump time. So let's go to that, and then we're going to fast forward to that particular spot. I'll do a little bit about his upbringing, and then I'll fast forward. And again, message me or chat me if you can't hear anything.
AKA Gregory D.
Where'd you grow up?
Uptown New Orleans.
Where?
Around Louisiana Avenue, Parkway, Claiborne, General Taylor, Uptown, 12th Ward, you know what I'm saying?
Were there musicians in your family?
No, but my father was a sports announcer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for NBC with Chair Clark. So he used to do all the fights at the Municipal Auditorium. Yeah, so that was the closest as far as everybody else. They just listened to a lot of music. So it wasn't no more musicians.
What kind of records did you have in your house?
I love to answer this question. You mean as far as growing up, the music I grew up on was
like your mom and dad's
Parliament, Bootsy Collins, no brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters. Parliament, Bootsy Collins, Sister Sledge, LTD, Average White Man, Wild Cherry, the Brothers Johnson, the Commodores, Brick, Confunction, the Ohio Players, Heat Wave, the Jacksons. I used to name that. That's all I like listening to. All the old stuff, Cameo, stuff like that.
When do you remember first wanting to be a musician?
Well, I understand with a musician standpoint, I play drums. So
when did that start?
That started like in 7th grade.
In marching band?
Listen, I was, as a matter of fact, I started wanting to play drums in like maybe 6th grade. But when I got to 7th grade, I was at Maine. And my father took me to McDonald 35 in St. Augustine football game. So I saw the marching bands. And I just fell in love with St. Augustine's band at the time. Well, I started playing drums at McMain. Once I finished playing drums at McMain, I then went on to James Durham Middle School my 8th grade year because I had an altercation at McMain and I got sent to my district school. Well, understand McMain taught me how to read music and write music. So by the time I got to 8th grade, I started learning the street fundamentals of playing drums. So I was, pretty much well balanced. But that 8th grade year, my father brought me to the game, St. Paul played 35 again. And this time, 35 blew St. Augustine out. So at this point, I mixed up as far as what high school I want to go to. I wound up going to McDonald 35. Once I wound up going to McDonald 35, I started picking up on doing rap music at the time. Just in my homeroom class, beating on a desk, reciting a couple rhymes, And I picked up from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, started getting the talent shows and still playing music in the band. And at this time, when I was getting the talent shows out, I was in there with a partner called ERC. We had a group called Rescue Crew. We had a little chicken there named Tiger P. That was all, no matter what, it's never going to fade.
So now I'm gonna fast forward to hear about Funk Jump Time.
DJs. But what about that first record?
No,
Never
they
Forget
didn't
We-
get banned by DJs. The record got banned by different high school authorities that you let the DJs know you can play whatever you want to in this day, but you better not put a Gregory D record on Funk Jump Time. That's a hell of a. Anytime the school board can come forward and say, you better not play this record, we got a strong record.
Well, starting with Never Forget, so what gave you the idea? I mean, it had been something that had been going on in second lines and brass bands and stuff for a while, so you just put it on wax and it just seemed natural. And
Let me tell you something. I believe in one thing. The reason I can flip the script and still dominate right now at a whole nother level is because I believe in originality. Anything that I do, no matter if I looked up to somebody in the industry when I was coming up, I do originality. I do me. I set the mark. And that's been throughout my whole career. Everybody else wants to talk about New York. Everybody else wants to talk about LA. Everybody was scared to talk about New Orleans. I don't have time for that. I'm gonna set the mark and make everybody start talking about New Orleans. Well, you know, when I drop, never forget about it made it cool for you to talk about the wars now in New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'm glad a lot of people picked up and they were able to represent where they actually come from. That's what it was for me. You know, I have to stand as being a creator and being real original. Because, you know, that's the only way you're going to actually get over the hump of the music industry. You have to be original. You know, you want people to identify you as having your own sound.
Yeah.
Listen, no matter what, Gregory D sounds like Gregory D. Gregory D on a record sounds like Gregory D. Gregory D on a commercial sounds like Gregory D. I mean, and that's just what I thrive on.
do you think you've got such a recognizable voice? You think you got it from your dad, or is it just something that you practice?
You know what? As time went on, I was so young when my father was doing the sports announcing that I didn't realize till I got older that, man, I probably got this from my daddy. It's probably where it came from.
So let's stop there. We can come back to that interview, but Courtney, do you have anything to say about this particular interview with Gregory?
I think there's 60 interviews in that archive.
60, yeah, 63, 64.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to Gregory D, but I wasn't aware of his background, you know, from a youth standpoint. He went to McMain, I went to McMain. It was a phenomenal record at the time. He did have a dominant voice, very strong, aggressive voice at the time. And it rang out. You know, a lot of other people have more smooth voices when they rap from New Orleans. I could definitely say he had, like he's saying, that announcer voice. It really projected, and he was the perfect person to do that song. I don't think I could think of a better rapper to do that song and kind of like establish the sound of the times. Because I wish I'd have prepared some photos to show you, to kind of give you the visual of what that time looked like in New Orleans. You know, everything it was very street. It was very off the porch. You know, people wearing ballots because, you know, the drug era was happening. This was the end of the Reagan era, the start of the Bush. There's a lot of drug money going around. There's a lot of people with gold medallions, gold teeth. People, you brought your Uzi into the club with you, and was taking pictures with Polo the Picture Man. You know, that I wish I had these Polaroids to send y'all. Hopefully y'all tune in next week so we could provide y'all with those so y'all could visually see what was going on at the time. You know, he really embodied that. I was rather excited while listening to that record.
So two things additionally. So many New Orleans rappers, and that's not strange for New Orleans. Most kids will play in a marching band, a brass band at some point. But many New Orleans rappers grew up playing in brass bands, in marching bands, in school. Like Gregory D said, he was a drummer. Then he ended up playing in marching band. So you hear this over and over and over again. And again, that's another peculiarity, a unique facet of New Orleans rap and bounce music making that you don't really find anywhere else. In Cleveland, rappers don't, generally speaking, almost all grow up playing in marching bands and brass bands. You know, that's not something specific to them. That is very normal here, and that absolutely influences the creation and the sound of the music itself.
Yeah, I went to high school, Lil Wayne, Mac Main, and we didn't have a marching band. Him and his now manager, Cortez, was 3 years older than Lil Wayne. The two of them actually started Mac Main's marching band. And then, of course, Lil Wayne went on to be Lil Wayne. Cortez went on to play at Jackson State, and now he's one of the biggest music managers in the world. But marching bands are everything. Even if you didn't play in a marching band, I could tell you right now at the bus stop, you had people used to just walk with drumsticks in their back pocket. They would challenge at the bus stop on textbooks. Like it was just in the culture. So even if you didn't make the band, some people ain't even go to school, but still was about the music. You know, that stuff was just all around. It was all around.
And it influences the sound of the music on every level.
100%. The rolling snares that you hear from Man and Fresh, the Godfather of Bounce, is directly related to what you would get from a band.
Exactly. And then another issue that Gregory D brought up. So at this point, late in the 80s, there was a lot of violence between wards and between neighborhoods. So you heard, you know, T.G. Tucker, I was asking a lot of stupid questions because I was trying to create these videos that would be accessible to a lot of different people, so they would be able to understand what he was talking about. But he, you know, he was very uncomfortable going to another neighborhood and performing, because at that point, that was a really dangerous thing to do. So a lot of these songs have to do with the violence between neighborhoods, the violence between wards, and the competition between, not just violence. There was a lot of playful competition as well. So that's another reason why you see project rap in so many of these different early bounce songs, the listing of the wards. And one thing that's really, really interesting, post-Katrina, so in modern day bounce songs, so often you still have that project rap, that listing of wards, but most of the places that they mention now are gone. They no longer exist. The Magnolia Project is no longer there. It's now Harmony Oaks. The St. Thomas is no longer there. It's River Garden, or, you know. So, sorry?
It's also Walmart.
Yeah, and Walmart. So, but the names of these places are kept alive through bounce songs, because they continue to do these word calls and continue to do these neighborhood listings. And so that's another way in which music serves as a really important site for cultural and community memory, right? So we not only think about rap and bounce as music making, we also think about it as community history. So moving forward, we're going to talk about Ricky B. I don't know if I made a slide for Ricky B. Let me see if I did. No, I didn't. So we're just going to talk about Ricky B, and then I'll play his song. So Ricky B, most of you will have heard this song, but I'm going to play it, and then we'll talk about your initial reactions to it. But this song is almost entirely about violence and competition between wards and neighborhoods. And it is probably the most famous bounce song ever recorded. Courtney, would you say so?
One of them for sure. It was one of the more feel-good ones. It had a commercial appeal, you know, due to the sample that they used. The what their name was? What's the group? I Take You There. Y'all gonna know it when y'all hear it. Shake for Your Hood. Shake for Your Hood if it's all good. Is his song. What's the name of those? What's the latest? You know that group?
You'll think of it in a second.
They were sisters. Forget their name.
Staple Singers.
There you go. There you go. Staples.
There we go.
Shake for your motherfucking hood if it's all good. Shake for your motherfucking hood.
And by the way, I'm sorry about all the cursing. It's kind of inevitable.
It's all good. Shake for your motherfucking hood if it's good.
All right, let's stop there. But you hear through this song, you hear so many of the elements, the basic building blocks of bounce. You hear the Triggerman bells from the Showboys drag rap. You hear references to trombones, marching band snares, all of these things, the building blocks, the fundamental building blocks of bounce. But then also, I mean, to us now, even then, it's a fun song to listen to. It's a fun song to hear. It's a happy song. So the stuff that he was talking about was very serious. He was talking about very serious violence and very serious issues happening in his community. And then he put it all together into a form that, the radio edit, they play constantly, and it's a feel good, happy song, but, still it's all of these things put together. It's, tragedy, sadness, happy, fun, playful, violent, humorous, good time. It's all of those things together, all at the same time. Everything.
It's life. It's life. It's every component of life.
Literally every component of life is, and that is another kind of fundamental characteristic of bounce. It's happy, it's sad, it's murder, it's good time, it's party, it's everything in between. So now we're going to listen to Ricky B talk about it. And while I find it, Courtney, if you have anything else to say about Ricky B or Shake for Your Hood.
He had several other records too. Y'all Holla. I think it was a Rebirth song he sampled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but it was so many people because I mean, you know, you had Ricky B, but then before that, you had Pimp Daddy, which was one of Cash Money early artists. What Gots to Be Real, and that song has heavy Jamaican influence in it. You know, there was Dolomite, there was Daddy-O, there was Everlasting Hitman, then Juvenile came. It was just countless records, and what was out of it is at the time where we had, you know, the Snoop Dogs of the world and you know, the Busta Rhymes, leaders of new schools, all of that stuff. The radio had a very drenched in local sound. This was, I don't want to say it was before Payola, but I don't think there was.
Oh, you broke up for a second. Start again.
That was the entire countdown. The entire countdown with local records. When you go to the club, there was all these local records being played. It was at that time we almost didn't need a national music scene. The identity was everything for us, and our sound was is what we wanted when we went.
Very well put. All right, we're going to listen to Ricky B talk about Shake for Your Hood.
Ricky B from New Orleans, Louisiana. Been in the hip hop game since 1992.
Tell us about where you grew up. What was your community like? What kind of music did you hear?
Kind of the community I grew up in was the St. Bernard Housing Project. It was located in the 7th Ward. When we grew up, we was influenced by artists like NWA, all the West Coast rappers, mostly because of what we were seeing in the community. We were actually living what they were talking about, so we understood and related to that. And then as rap evolved, you got the East Coast coming out with party music, so we adapted to that also. And then down here in our own community, we started creating our own sound, which we to go ahead and, you know, re-record and distribute with them, and that's how I became a part of Mogo.
So at what point was Shake for Your Hood then, and how long was the process from getting that song on the street to when Mogo signed you?
That song was recorded. I mean, it was written. It wasn't actually written as Shake for Your Hood. It was a regular rap. I mean, if you listen to the lyrics, I pretty much sang them. And when Kevin played the track, I sang it over that song. So within about 3 weeks to a month, Kevin, he always called me and said, we got some people that may want to talk to us, but it never happened until about a month later. They finally came to my house in New Orleans East and we talked about it and made the agreement. So about a month's time.
I think you know that song is still played on the radio all the time.
Yes, I get calls.
Many, many years later. So What do you think it is about that song that's stayed and has such indelible?
The relevancy. I mean, you talk about reality. I mean, that song, to me, it was, as I stated, it was written as a gangster rap, but it had a message in it. You know, it was sort of subliminal, but if you were old enough to understand it, you knew the message. And the city has changed. Nothing has changed in the city because when Shake for Your Hood was written, when Master P came out, 97, 98, he started bringing on the murder capital. So the relevancy to the lyrics of Shake for Your Hood and being the murder capital that he was screaming out, it still hadn't changed up to this day. So I still get the phone calls when it's played. People call me from nightclubs and just let me listen to it. They don't say anything, you know what I mean? So, you know, it feels good to know that, you know, you're still relevant of a song that was done, maybe 15, 16 years ago, something like that.
I mean, that's not the only one of your songs that's remembered. Obviously, you have many, many hits. You have All being one of them. You have done a lot of stuff with brass bands and second line influences. So maybe pick a song like Valhalla or another one where you used brass band influences or brass band players, and tell us about the production and writing process.
Well, with Y'all Holla, that was actually, we tried to get Rebirth into the studio. They were busy touring, doing a lot. And it was just like, okay, y'all go ahead and do what y'all need to do with it. Now, opposed to Y'all Holler, which was the anthem, it got Houston, the whole southern region just was bouncing to it. I did Let's Go Get 'Em, which was with my old high school band, John McDonald High School Band. A partner with me on that song, he was actually in the band. And I came up with the idea because they had just gotten Southern's band director, Herb, to direct John Mack's band. So we knew that it was going to be a different sound. So we just went to the school and we talked to him and we asked him that, we told him that, we would like to do some songs with some of the band members. And he just instantly like, okay. So we hit the studio, 2 days in the studio, and the song came out sounded just like Rebirth, Let's Go Get 'Em.
And did you then play it live in Second Lands with people?
Oh yeah. I performed Y'all Holler with Rebirth at this year's Congo Fest. Rebirth Brass Band was out there. I've done Let's Go Get 'Em with the members of John Mack's band. We've done that at reunions that school had, and we did it at a couple of concerts. But I performed it with different bands because it's actually a Rebirth song. I performed it with different bands at maybe about 4 or 5 different venues. So I have fun doing it because everybody knows it.
All right, so I'm gonna try to find, at some point I'll try to find Rebirth and him doing Let's Go Get 'Em. So we'll listen to that at some point too. But Ricky B is a really good example of, he's in his early 50s now, and he is now getting calls from folk festivals all around the world asking him to come perform. And that's wonderful, but that just shows, we're talking, less 30 years ago, he would have been considered, like a dangerous musician from, a lot of critical standpoint, how journalists were writing about him. And now he's playing at folk festivals a few decades later, So this is how music cycles through the public imagination. There's nothing new about this. But it's really, really interesting to see how these dynamics play out in New Orleans specifically. Courtney, do you have anything to add about him?
I would agree. To me, that it's phenomenal that the music is taking on a second life and is getting international recognition like that. For it to be included in a folk scenario, that wasn't something I was up on. It's, the definition of folk music, but it's clearly pretty much everything we make. I think it's amazing for that to happen with it being such a local thing. It's one thing to have like a resurgence of your music when you were an international superstar, kind of like how Muddy Waters, he took over America at one point, then it died down, but then people caught on overseas, and then it's like there was a resurgence of it. For it to be such a local or regional thing, and now to be, recognized and pretty much brought back to life, and be something that could pay this man, at 50-something years old for something he did when he was, 19, 20 years old. It's just a beautiful thing. I love to see something that happens so natural, be something that's so established now, and it's recognized not only from party goers, but in academia space, archivist space, or however you want to reference all the rest of that stuff that's literally outside of the culture. I just think it's beautiful.
So I'm going to try to play, I don't know how good the quality of this YouTube is. We'll see. If it's not, then I'll stop it. But this is Ricky B performing Let's Go Get 'Em, or a version of Let's Go Get 'Em with a Mardi Gras Indian group. So this is the Guardians of the Flame. And let's see.
get it. Let's go 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 get it. Check this out. Y'all want to see him get ready? I want everybody to say, let's go get him at the same time I say, we gonna rock him out. Y'all want to say, let's go get him, and he gonna holler back. Y'all ready? Come on. 1, 2, 3, go. Let's go get him. 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 Let's go get him.
All right. So Preservation Hall is another space in New Orleans that really understands how to program and deal with music in a progressive way that matches the aesthetics of New Orleans music making. And so they started early on programming bounce and rap shows alongside the New Orleans Preservation Hall Jazz Band and the Jazz All-Stars. And Courtney can tell you about one particular performance that he was involved with. He headlined a show at Preservation Hall along with Fiend, who was a No Limit Recording All-Star. So Courtney, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it was, I believe we were, the second hip hop actor performing there, maybe the third. That's the fly for it right behind me. It's framed up because it's literally the best show I ever had in New Orleans. That was around the start where I got away from performing with a DJ. I haven't performed with a DJ in probably 5 years now. I only perform with either my band or just any other band. And that was a traditional brass band. We might have done 1.5 rehearsals, and we totally winged it. What I love about that venue is that technically there is no sound equipment in it. It's an acoustic room for acoustic instruments, pianos, horns, so on and so forth. We had to bring in a Bose speaker and just connect microphones to it so we could rap over the horns and stuff. But we sold the place out. It was the perfect fusion of old and new. It was almost like, jazz being the grandfather, it us being the grandsons of the genre, all just getting out together in one room. It was an amazing thing. The room was colorful. The vibes were high. It was a phenomenal night. Y'all haven't got a chance to go to Preservation Hall. God say the same when the world open up again. You got to go there and just feel that energy in there. They do an excellent job at curating the culture and maintaining it in the most authentic and most pure way. It's probably the most pure venue in that French Quarter area. A lot of that stuff is not even owned by people from New Orleans or even America. But that venue stands out. It's definitely a beacon in the music community in New Orleans.
So yeah, we will actually probably play a video from that performance sometime in the next couple classes when we move forward in time. But we're going to end tonight's class with DJ Jimmy. So there's actually a video we can watch, and we'll hear a little from him. But he had probably the third kind of foundational hit in early bounce music. So Courtney, do you want to say anything about DJ Jimmy while I find a video?
I used to live up the street from that boy. He was delivering pizzas on there.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty cool. But his sound, that record, he bit off of, I think, Ohio Players or somebody like that with the intro of the song. But I believe the rapper, writer Devious, he wrote on that record as well. That record got sampled so many times, and this Devious teaches at McMain. But it's beautiful to see him getting plaques and all that other type of stuff, in 2019, 2020 was something that he did in the early 90s. The DJ Jimmy record was a phenomenal record, definitely a vicious dance record. And it didn't have it only had, I think, the bells from the Trigger Man, and it actually took, I forget where this break beat come from, but there was another popular break beat that made its way into a few other songs. But great call and response song for sure.
So we're going to go ahead and listen to DJ Jimmy So we hear all of the elements that we heard in the previous ones. We also hear the Halloween theme being sampled, which is always interesting. A lot of these early bounce songs, I don't know, Courtney and I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but a lot of them have kind of like Halloween and like spooky influences.
Yeah, we pull from pop culture.
Right, absolutely. But you know, around that time, it was Halloween came out in what 19 whatever, I don't know. Earlier than that, but you know, there were lots of those kind of themes in this music, kind of spooky thrillers, haunted house stuff. You hear it over and over and over again.
Yep.
Absolutely. So Allison Fensterstock is a local journalist, and Aubrey Edwards is a photojournalist, and together they created their own archive called Where They At, based off of DJ Jimmy's song. So we're gonna find a little bit just so you can hear DJ Jimmy in his own words, and then we're gonna conclude with a little discussion. And that's it for the night. So let's see. So if you've never seen this archive, it is folded into mine, so you can see all this stuff on mine too, but it's really neat to go to this particular site because the photography is beautiful. And they've got a lot of lesser known people that very few people outside of New Orleans have ever heard. So we'll scroll through and see if we can find DJ Jimmy. Here we go. And this is just an audio archive.
I have pictures that I'm gonna put on my album cover from when I was small with my Fisher Price record player smiling by the Christmas tree with me older now. The music been in my life, but what I liked it to listen to music and play music. It came a time and certain things happened that when I was still at a young age that I had to go into the ballroom, the clubs and stuff playing. I didn't know it was like a stepdad that he was gonna die, but he passed, and that left me with all his records. And so I started being a DJ. And that's how that created, because he had an older crowd and I had a younger crowd. So what I did is I mixed and blended so both crowds could be enjoyed at the same time. So in them times, there were people that used to come and wanted to get on the mic and wanted an instrumental. This particular time, I'm gonna say the dance came out first before the beat was formed, because they was holding it down. That's what they called it first, before the beat even came. What the beat did is when they held it down, they didn't want to come back up. So on the record, I had to keep that beat going to keep them doing house so they could keep shaking like us all shaking.
It's always really phenomenal to hear artists talking in their own words so many decades later about some of these early songs. It's always fascinating. So I'm going to stop share on this now, and then we're going to do a little discussion, and then we're done for the night. So does anybody want to talk about anything? Have any questions? Have any comments?
So I've always really wondered about like how much of hip hop lyrics are improvised versus like they're there and that's the structure that the song's built about.
I could say specifically in the bounce sector, there was no structure. It was a very loose, and to this day, still is a very loose thing. You know, again, it's improvisation. Most of this stuff isn't written down. It was a vibe that we went off of and still go off of. And again, like you heard T Tucker with where they at, where they at, where they at, and then you get Jimmy come with where they at, girl, or where they at, girl. And then the variations, with every song, it'll be a new variation of something that, you know, you just heard. So there was no structure to it whatsoever. If there was any structure, it would just be from, it was more so on the DJ or the producer's behalf, right? And that was simply just a very hip hop thing. You would get a break beat and you would put a popular melody or rhythm on top of it. And you know, you would control that. You would control the breakdown. You would control the whole nine. But definitely on the lyrical side, it was just winging it. Still is, really.
And when you're talking about, you know, this particular music that early on, it was all public performance first, right? So all of this was happening in clubs, at block parties outside, street performance, house parties. And then like recording was way after the fact. It was just like, you know, oh, well, maybe we can actually make music, or people really want to hear this over and over and over again. Maybe we can make money off of it. But that was kind of after the fact. Like it was very much, so if you think about the structure of a second line, for example, a brass band walking down the street playing in a second line, their performance is going to have everything to do with the weather that day, who is standing on the sides of the street, you know, what the particular vibe is of that particular space and time, who is dancing, how well they're dancing. And that has everything to do with the creation of the performance. And the exact same thing happened with bounce. Mm-hmm. You know, it completely depended upon, you know, the structure of the performance, place and time in that particular day. And then, you know, often then when they translated it to the recording studio, things got a little bit weird, right? Because it was not, that wasn't a type of music that was necessarily meant for that particular medium. So then, you know, the recordings got better over time, but the recordings at the beginning were really rough. Yeah. Yeah.
Much like the beginnings of hip hop, you know, a lot of samples were out of tune. You know, those sounds were clashing, the whole nine, and which was beautiful because, you know, we carved out a new space that didn't have rules, and you know, eventually we made our own. And now it's the standard sound that we pretty much, in my opinion, hold the patent on, and it's the authority on that particular sound.
Absolutely.
And maybe like as a follow-up to that, then if you think about like what's happened with COVID and how that's impacted live music and performance, and my experience of that has mostly been around the brass band scene, and it's obviously like so hard because there's no vibe, because there's no humans around dancing and stuff when people are trying to live stream. How's that coming through in like bounce?
So I'm sorry. I was going to say something and then you go, but I'm so glad you brought that up, because when you're talking about like, you know, American Black music making in general, call and response is one of the biggest elements. And, you know, I'm doing a lot of interviews for the NEH right now with artists all around the country, talking about how COVID has impacted them. And one thing that almost everybody says is we have a really hard time doing what we do without the call and response reaction with people. So, you know, I'm performing into my phone or whatever, And without that back and forth, it's very, very hard to make the kind of music that we make. I hear that over and over and over again. And so things are getting strange. And it is affecting the way people are making music, how they make music, and what kind of music that they're making. Courtney, what were you going to say?
100%. I haven't performed since COVID, and I sort of refuse to do it into a front camera of a phone or iPad. You know, even if it's just two people in the room, I need somebody in the room to vibe off of, because it's an exchange. It's not a one-way thing. And you know, doing it in this virtual space, it's you're going out, nothing's coming back to you. It's not like I could perform and read the comments flowing down the screen. You know? So, you know, I'm interested in seeing where this all goes. I would expect all musicians voted for Biden, but that's neither here nor there.
Yes, they all said they did. Anybody else have any
Questions, comments?
Thoughts?
Yeah, just shoot them out.
Or Jason, anything from you?
No, I think that's it. We've got 3 more classes to go. So this was fascinating. I loved it. It was great. I'm glad that we've got it recorded and preserved. And we will be sending an email out to everybody tomorrow morning with a copy of it for people that missed it and for people if they want to go back and look at certain things. So if you have any questions during the week, you have my email that you got my email from. You can email me. You have Nesby's, you have Holly. So if you have any questions, let me know. It looks like there's one message. Oh, someone said Tamara said they really enjoyed it. So we look forward to this, a couple more weeks of this.
All right, I'll see you guys next week. And next week, we're going to be talking about early Cash Money and No Limit Records.
Thank you guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Good night.